Hey, Devin.
Hi, Jay.
Oh boy, how you doing?
I'm good. Adrian's out. My skip is also out, so it's kind of quiet. But it also feels like I'm in charge of more things. A lot of more people have been started asking me for things because they're like, Adrian's out. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if I know the answer, but I try to help.
That's good. When in charge, be in charge.
Yeah. How are you doing?
I'm hanging in there. Not too bad at all. Not too bad at all.
When we first chatted, you said, also I realize this is recording, but you said you watched Love Island, right?
Oh, we're not doing that over this recording. We're not doing that over this. Better hit me up. Hit me up offline. No peasant. We. Wow.
Oh, I'm gonna ping you on the side.
Yeah, good. Oh, goodness gracious.
That's why I wanted to warn you that I realized it was.
Oh no, 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 no on this recording. We ain't doing that. Yeah. Oh boy. Hmm. Wow. I watch a lot of things. I watch a lot of things. In my spare time to clear my mind. Clear my. Mhm. Well, hopefully we have a decent turnout today. I mean, I know the last two meetings have been pretty shy on the turnout, but
Yeah.
hopefully it's a little bit otherwise we have to go back into reaching out people again.
Do other groups like who have these consistent meetings have like a bigger turnout usually? Because I've never been to any of the other SIG meetings.
Yeah, I mean it's usually like I mean well hell the salsa meetings is pretty the main one's pretty large and then a couple of the SIGs that get a little smaller. Um, it's usually decent turnout around the majority of them, and there are a few that's on like a few people, but all important work gets done.
Mhm.
Um, just this one is a hit or miss, and that's because we missed a few weeks into this year. Um, and of course, to do that, you pretty much got to start all over again with the outreach.
Right.
Um, but that's maybe that's what we have to do is start over again with the outreach. Um, give it a give it a few more minutes, and then if we don't get attendance, then I'll have to put out blasts. Put out as a matter of fact, maybe I need to do that now. Let me see. I think I know we got some people in the a member of the. Let's put up the. All right, so I just put inside the Slack that the meeting was in progress. Hopefully, get some people joining after that.
Sounds good.
as an answer to our couple of our so we're talking about getting somebody to help us edit the the doc for ISO.
Mm-hmm.
That price tag, it seems that we can request funding from the TAC for that little $3,000 to $5,000 clip to do the editing.
Oh,
Yeah, I didn't even know that. Once I learned that, I was like, ooh, that's something I need to bring before the SIG, and if we can get a yeah on that, go ahead and post that to the TAC.
Is there like an application involved or something?
Um, I imagine that we need to do like a quick write up or something like that, but it really is putting up an issue, putting an issue on the site, or an issue putting an issue on the TAC saying, hey, we'd like to formally request or put up an issue, request funding for ISO format edits for S2C2F, and then a proposal from there. Because we are already at 1.1, so
Right.
we're not in, things are still being improved upon, developed, but we already have a very good document that's ready to go. We're doing training as well, so together some training as well. So this should be a slam dunk for us. Yeah, we're gonna be doing and I don't know if Adrian mentioned this to you, because we had a meeting last week. I don't think you were in with us, but we're gonna put together like a nice little 8-hour training block for S2C2F. What he doesn't know that I'll tell him is that we're gonna try to get a day on the calendar at Open Summit for this 1-day 8-hour block of training. I see if we can either get a room at the hotel or get a room at a nearby location. But that's going to be something that I want to bring before the SIG here as something that we're going to actually do.
Okay.
So whatever training gets developed, we're going to sit there and bust this training out during the Open Summit in May. To help us with adoption and all that kind of stuff.
Is that the open source summit? I'm looking it up.
Yeah,
in Vancouver?
Yeah, yep, in Vancouver. Yep. Yep.
So you and Adrian are both like already going and registered?
I'm already going. I'm not sure if Adrian, you and Adrian should probably go. I mean, it's just a drive for you guys. They got to fly up there, I'm going. I'll be there because it's OpenSSF Day is the 10th. So I'll definitely be there for OpenSSF Day, and then of course the Open Summit. Yeah, y'all are involved now. Y'all should be there. Adrian, especially if we do this training block, you guys should be there.
I know that like Adrian has been trying to go to conferences and stuff still, but I think I don't know. I keep hearing that budget is tight, so I don't know what's going on with everything.
Budget's like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. But some things some things we have to pay. This is one of the things that budget should account for, because this deals with a framework that we're trying to bring to ISO spec. So all things that accomplish that effort should be within the constraints of budgeting, right? We should be able to accommodate that. When we're talking about the price of attendance to the conference, I believe Vancouver is close enough for you guys to drive to. Right? Is it a drive or a flight for you? I can't remember. I know I want to say Seattle's super close.
It's a drive. It's about 3 hours, but depending on like the border people,
that border crossing is something else.
Yeah, I haven't done it yet, so I can't speak from experience, but I have heard people waiting there for hours.
No, I mean it's like, they don't play up there. Like if you come up on their, where they run you through the computer, you come up with anything. Like it's really hard getting into Canada. You have a prior whatever, so traffic infractions even. It's a little sketchy, but
Yeah, my friend was passing through, like he was coming back down from Vancouver and he had bought a bunch of like house plants there and they just confiscated all of them because you can't bring like
yeah,
plant.
anything back. And it's so silly because it's not like you're like flying from a far off land. You're like driving.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you're driving from one place to the other. Like I actually have global entry.
Oh, okay.
So driving from Canada to Canada and Mexico, those it's a little easier for me to get through. Um, get through into these locations just because of that status, but for others, it's incredibly hard. Well, we're into like almost 15 minutes. I'm assuming that no one else is joining. Um, you're welcome to drop off, hit Teams, and start talking to me about that show that will not go mentioned here. Wait, won't go mentioned here and all that. You're welcome you're welcome to hit Teams and start talking to me about that.
Okay.
You know, um, I'll stay here, stick around for another few minutes, see if anybody else joins.
Okay, sounds good. And I guess just ping me if I need to rejoin.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, you got it.
Bye.
Hey, Andrew. Andrew.
Hey, Jay.
I was about to adjourn the meeting. We're already 20 minutes in, and so far it's just me. I was hanging on a while to see if anyone would join, but I think for the purposes of what I wanted to tackle for today, probably requires a few more people. Oh, there goes David. Oh goodness, this is so David. I was just saying I was getting ready to adjourn the meeting. It was just me up until about a minute ago when Andrew joined.
I'm so sorry. I traffic and my glasses broke. It was just a comedy of errors doing a little errand.
Yeah. It's well, I mean, you both are here now. I mean, that the agenda is pretty I won't say pretty lofty, but I want to make sure that we have um enough time to go through it. Let me make sure I post the agenda and notes here in the chat.
Okay. This is the new spec format, format edits, and so on. Is that what we're talking about?
Yep.
Okay.
Wanted to
Did you get that new template, by the way?
well, we got so the template that we have is the one that's inside of the license, the community spec license.
That's the ISO format?
I believe so, but that was the format that we were instructed to use. Now, if there's a different format, we'd like that too.
Okay. It may be. I didn't do the check.
Oh yeah, I mean the things with that license is how often is that updated, right? We should probably make sure. Either way, one of the things I wanted to talk about with respect to with respect to formatting is that I learned that we could potentially request funding from the TAC. So I know that in the JDFs, I was talking with Seth and Jory, and to get Rex, who does the ISO format editing or whatever it is, and out of the JDF, he's a contractor, and he usually charges anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000, to my understanding, to help with those edits. And I believe I learned that we can request that funding from the TAC. So if that's the case, I wanted to bring it before the SIG to discuss and see if
fair
that's
enough. Just so you know, this is a technicality, but I feel like I've got an obligation to do it. Technically, what the TAC just reviews a proposal for merit. The governing board in the end is always the one that has the power of the purse. Okay. Yep. So I feel like I'm out duty bound to say that. That said, the governing board has actually approved certain funding ahead of time for certain areas. And and although the governing board has the final say on how funds are spent, they as a reality, they always ask the TAC, hey, give us your cut. The governing board doesn't have to do what the TAC says, but they always want to know. So the real life process is bring it to the TAC, and then, well, if the TAC says no, you can actually still bring it to the governing board, but your odds just went down. Whereas if they say yay, the odds go up. Usually the TAC is more interested in yes buts, and then they'll have some suggestion for you.
Great that you say that, because that's actually how it was told to me. It was said that the governing board has already said, look, for certain dollar amounts, don't even approach us with that. If it's not egregious,
right?
You can approve it down there. Let us know, and we'll cut the check. But don't bring us, don't bring before the governing board like small denominations of money.
Right. Well, I would word it differently, but the result's the same. Basically, the governing board has in the end, the governing board is the decider, but the governing board has pre-approved certain things.
Yeah.
But while I would word it differently, the result's the same.
Yeah. Well, cool. And so to that end, you know, I'd be if like I said, I wish we had the more people on call so we can get the yays. But
yeah,
I guess we have another 3 of us here. I think, you know, however that wording goes, help me out with it. But I think if that's the direction we want to head, then we could put up is it an issue that we create on the TAC the TAC repo? Is that an issue?
Post it as an issue on the TAC. I mean, you can raise it multiple ways, but I would raise it as an issue to the TAC. Just in case it might be missed, you could also post it to their mailing list. Yeah, I would put it to the issue. The reason put as a GitHub issue is the TAC will see it, but others can see it and chime in. Now, this is not usually the debates are on technical matters.
Right.
I mean, this is hey, want to reformat me? I don't know what the technical issue is here. So, but that's the you know, we want to be open and transparent. So, follow the process. I mean, in the end, what it is it has to be raised to the TAC. And while there's multiple mechanisms, GitHub issues is the easy way to do it.
Absolutely. Okay, good. So you know, we'll make sure that we get that done. Adrian and I had a good call with Glenn over in SKF, and I want to say his name is Tom Serowitz. Is it Serowitz? He's
Glenn. I know Glenn Van. You don't mean Glenn?
Glenn, not Glenn. Is it Glenn DeCosta? Right, and from the SKF stuff that we're doing, so, you know, he's in the best practice working group with us.
Yes.
And then SEREWICZ is his last name. Tom, is it Tom? I can't remember.
Tom S.
He works for the LF. He works for the LF.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I can't. Oh, man, I have his email address. Just can't remember his.
It doesn't matter. Anyway, Tom S. So you're talking about including S2C2F in the SKF.
In the SKF and creating LF training modules.
Mm-hmm.
So creating training modules that are both on SKF and on the LF. And I think we were looking at doing something like an 8-hour training course. Actually, modeled after something you did, David, with some of the training you did, like a nice 8-hour training course. But we talked about that on Friday, and we were exchanging a few emails back and forth about that as well.
Mm-hmm.
To get that kind of off the ground. One of the Tim is his name. One of the other things that we were thinking about doing with that was seeing if we can't get a day on the calendar at the Open Summit, or you know, if it's either at the Open Summit, if we can do it at the hotel there in Vancouver, or if we have to find another room somewhere else, but to get a day. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, do you mean like presenting during OpenSSF Day, or are we talking more about like a birds of the feather meeting?
We're talking about a day for the training, to do like an 8-hour training.
Oh.
A day of 8-hour training during that time period. That's a bit heavier of a
that's a heavy lift, and especially earlier on when we still, I mean, S2C2F is still, I mean, obviously they've made great progress, but I think there's a number of things to be fixed up before. I would, you know, make sure the I's are more dotted before we do a lot of training modules. You know, doing the crosswalk between that and salsa and fresca. But I mean, it's the right thing to do. It's just I would do them in a different order.
Okay.
But you know, Now, as far as the 8-hour so let's talk. Do you want to talk about training, and then we can come back, because it is a good thing to look ahead towards.
Yeah.
So I can speak a whole lot about this, because I mean, you know, we've got that online course. I've talked to them extensively. I mean, there's alternatives. Andrew, by the way, are you familiar with Linux Foundation's training stuff? I mean,
I'm not, no.
you're not. Okay, so this is, so I don't know if you're interested, but at least this will have the advantage of being something you haven't heard before. Okay, I mean, in the end, we want to make sure that people know stuff. There's no obligation that be specifically through LS training, but Linux Foundation actually has a training and certification department, where basically they make sure that the course, you know, basically, when you want to sign up for an online course or for an in-person course, there's a lot of, I don't know how else you call it, scut work. You know, keep the site running. You know, people have a problem with a particular system, and hey, it's not working. How do I fix that? Okay, they handle all that stuff. Okay, for course content, they can and sometimes do contract out to develop course content, in some cases even in-house, but usually we depend on someone else to create the course content. So for example, I developed the course content for the Developing Secure Software course, and then work with them to get that deployed on their site, and they manage the whole registration and making the tests and keeping the site running and giving people digital badges. So what they need from us only is create the course content. They're pretty flexible about how you get the course content, but the approach that I took, and I would suggest, is create it in something simple. I mean, you could use Google Docs. We used Markdown. We actually did the first version in Google Docs and then converted it to Markdown. And that way, every time we make a change, we can share with them, hey, here's the change, and they can go make sure that it implements in their system. There is an annoyance that there tends to be kind of two stages where you create the content and then you tweak, but the systems generally want to do it that way. It's kind of a pain to do it any other way. And since you don't have to deal with it, it works out just fine. They can support video and audio and all sorts of goodness. However, they have an interesting recommendation. I mean, if your material is very short-lived and then it goes away, videos are awesome. The problem that they have with videos is that they're really hard to update. And SafeCode is probably a fabulous example of this. SafeCode created some really awesome content, but it's so expensive to update that it's basically frozen in the past. And you know, they have all these awesome videos about Java, and what they mean is running Java on your client as part of your browser. Nobody does that, okay? But it's really, really hard to update materials, and so it doesn't happen. And so while they can support videos and do, they typically suggest try to do a lot of simple text, simple quiz things as you go along. By all means, you do video introductions, maybe some video snippets, but while they can support it, there's a lesson learned about updatability, which is really important. I have hopes that longer term, we can use some machine learning systems to make that a little easier and better, but that's a separate conversation. So there's both a how you do it and some kind of lessons learned. Jay, you're putting your head down. Are you trying to hide your eyes? You don't want to reveal any tells?
No, none of that. So yeah, so the call that have explained as much, very easy, say easy process. The thing about S2C2F is that there's already 8 practices that's right there already. Now, I agree with you, David. I's dotted, T's crossed. But with those 8 practices that are there, I don't see those changing. I think contextually, those are already in place, and we can actually build modules off of those eight practices, save for adjusting the entirety of the spec, to make sure that those I's are dotted and T's are crossed. I think those 8 practices can be
okay. I think you're probably right, but we keep coming back to we really need to do the crosswalk with at least salsa. I know it's been on the it's on the to-do list, but I would like to I would strongly recommend. I can't tell you to do anything, but yeah, I would strongly recommend do the crosswalk first. I don't think it'll be that hard. And if there is an issue, I think we'd rather know sooner. I mean, it's fair to argue that there's always going to be changes and improvements. Heck, that's true for the development course as well. There's actually, in a meeting earlier today, we talked about one particular area that used to be really important. Maybe we can drop it now. But we need some security folks to verify that it's obsolete. But presuming it's obsolete, we'll drop it, and that's okay. But that said, I would like to eliminate any conflicts, just because I'm afraid. That's something I want to avoid. And I'm not expecting any, but I think it would be wise to know. So that would be my one step ahead. So if you don't mind, I'm going to write that down. David. Oops, actually, that's not here. All right, so I've been putting notes in the wrong place. So let's see here. So this is really kind of its own point. And
so we should probably see if we can't get that on the book sooner than later too.
Okay, so let's see here. Let's cross compare with salsa first. I mean, they're putting up a draft for V1, so they think they're nearly done with at least the build. Now they've decided to break out the source code control separately, but for at least the build part.
Yeah, I mean, we had a meeting this morning in the positioning thing, and talking about it, I feel like there needs to be some scoping done on that source part. What exactly does that entail? I think as far as the dependency management piece of it, I think that we're pretty solid there. But I do agree that there might be some a little overlap is okay. I just want to make sure that we understand what the future state scope is of source, and if there isn't one that's solid yet, that doesn't get developed over what we're doing and what we're doing here.
Now there is one other thing that comes to mind. I'm not sure. The early part of S2C2F, which is really an awesome part, was basically a list of threats and how they map to the rest of the doc.
Yeah.
There is a proposal up to the TAC of maybe using this document for at least the supply chain attacks as the official taxonomy. Now, I don't actually think it'd be hard to map what S2C2F currently does.
Yeah, and that doc you have is actually one of the docs that I was going to use as one of my foundational items for proposing the creation of the taxonomy SIG.
Okay.
So taking that doc, taking a few other things that we got kicking around, bringing those all into a centralized location to be worked on and formalized.
Okay. All right. So I'm being recorded, so I'm going to be a little careful here. But I am in conversations. I have had some brief conversations with the PhD student who's been doing the primary work on this thing. Okay. First of all, I want to be careful. No promises. Okay.
Right.
But the student is saying, first of all, this is really great work. I mean, I would organize things a little differently. In particular, I would have put the dependency confusion in a slightly different place, but it's there. Okay. And it uses a different term
Yeah.
I mean, gracious than other people use, but it's there, and it is
Yes.
that broader picture that's very impressive. So it turns out that this particular person has done some awesome work and has two problems.
Mhm.
One of them is sustainability,
Yeah.
and the other is, well, actually, I guess it's all the same thing, which is sustain over time, keeping it up to date.
Yeah.
So I have briefly started discussions, no promises, that I know of an organization that's very interested in supply chain of open source software.
Mhm.
And, you know, it might be a very good place for it to live.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if that, that, and we are never interested in taking over somebody's project without, what do you call it? A hostile fork. Okay. Even if it's legal, we have zero interest in that stuff. But if the people involved, they're academics, they want it sustained, but they can't really justify it over time. And we want it sustained because we maybe want to use it. That might be an interesting road. As I said, there's no.
So I'll tell you, when I went to a few different SIGs and a couple of different working groups with this, and I got head nods. That person, that same individual that you're talking about, emailed me directly and said that he wants to be in on the SIG and in on helping me write the proposal to create that taxonomy SIG so it can live and breathe and be a working document that's continuously maintained, like you're saying. So I hear you, I hear what you're saying, and I'm telling you, he emailed me directly to say the same, right? So he's actually on board.
Okay, all right.
He's on board.
I think what we have. I don't want to mention this person's name more because they haven't allowed me to say that publicly. But I think I've been a little coy. I think I'm going to just ask them directly if they're interested. And obviously, I view this as, I don't know of a better analogy for this. I view this as dating towards a potential marriage. So both parties have to agree to the union, if it will. OpenSSF, has to agree. These other folks have to agree. Otherwise, carry on, and we're all glad for you. But but I think I'm just going to raise it direct, and if they're interested, start raising it further, because I don't. By the way, for that, I don't see a conflict between S2C2F. I would be interested. Again, another quick crosswalk. If there's something.
Here's the thing about it. The thing about it is that if we go down that road and we create that SIG that does nothing but builds this one common language across all of the OpenSSF, then ultimately we're going to have to change some things in S2C2F and Salsa and whatever and anything else underneath the supply chain integrity working group, because we're going to have to work off of that one taxonomy that we're building in this one area that's supposed to govern the conversation that we're having everywhere else. So that's definitely worth the effort, but also puts out more work for us in terms of the crosswalk later on.
All right.
I'm okay with.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to ask basically, if they're interested in having the OpenSSF sustain this, and and then note that all sides have to agree, but but nevertheless, I think I've been very cautious and indirect, and I think maybe that's no longer time for that. I can't promise the OpenSSF or either side, but I can say how how it would work, and then see if there's interest.
Yeah. We're looking at about 15 minutes left in this hour. I know that we could sit here and and bat that around. But I think we have a good game plan with that. I did want to make sure we talked about the positioning meeting, at least the podcast. And then there's one here about the inclusion of patching tools in the security tooling working group guide. As far as this one is real quick. We had the first supply chain integrity working group positioning meeting today. So what that meeting is we had the salsa positioning meeting first. But what as a working group we said, you know, we're just focused on positioning one of these frameworks that we're working on. We got a few other things we're working on here. We should really be talking about how these things are bridged together, working together, and then we should be positioning them in such a way that the conversation is a bit more, broader and a bit more unified across all of these different efforts. So we had the first positioning meeting for all three of them today, which is important because if you I'm there.
Yep.
A few others of us should be there as well to make sure that that we're speaking in earnest. I'll tell you, we just had the RC version 1 blog of Salsa that was released this week. And then of course there were a lot of first of all, the blog was great. I mean, it had a lot of good information, and it talked about the build track and talked about where they're going. Of course, one of the things I had with that was, why didn't we mention anything about the OpenSSF in that blog? That was my concern, because the blog didn't originate within the positioning SIG like it should have been. So wondering why that was, why there was no mention of it. Of course, I had my feedback to it, and I mentioned as much in the feedback that I was giving during the creation of the blog. But one of the other things was that did not originate within the OpenSSF, and that was the other concern. So we're trying to prevent that from happening again.
Okay, I mean, I have no interest in stopping people from posting blog posts outside. So, but that said, hey, connecting things together, awesome.
Yeah. So that's the effort that we've definitely undertaken. So I wanted to make sure that was mentioned here. Let's see what else we got. We have there was S2C2F was discussed on the open source security podcast. And the podcast is there, so please go into the podcast, hear about that. It was mentioned by Joylyn Karui. She's out of Kenya. Now she didn't really have a lot of info on it, so her mention of it was great, but we want to make sure that when we go into these podcasts and we begin mentioning all the great work we're doing, we want to make sure we're read in enough so that when we're asked certain questions, we can provide certain answers that are in line with the work that we're doing and all that kind of stuff. Great that it was mentioned, and I've had the pleasure of speaking with Joylyn directly. Great individual. She just wasn't armed with the meat that she needed in order to provide a lot of the right insight. So we want to make sure that we get that right for next time.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. Let's see. And then of course it's the inclusion of patching tools in the security tooling guide. I'm all about that. Any time that we can find branches into other working groups, into other SIGs, and vice versa, right? Anytime that we can combine efforts and have that collaborative and cooperative effort across OpenSSF, that's always warranted. Yep. So yeah, I'm all for that. If there's tools that we have that we're talking about that we can be used in the security tooling working group, then by all means, that's the place for it too to be further developed. Go ahead.
Right now, I should warn you that right now, because so many organizations are kind of pressing to respond to both the US and EU presses for SBOM, the security tooling working group has been kind of, I would say, a hostile takeover, except it's from the inside. I don't know what you call that.
Yeah.
It's not a coup d'etat because I mean, when the lead does it, it's not. I guess a temporary change of direction. They have decided that they are going to, for the moment, focus on S-bombs, S-bomb generation, and so on, because while all tools good, have more tooling is good, automation good. The S-bomb area is the one where that's just not. That's not what we've been doing in the past. This is a big change industry wide. And so they're right now trying to respond to that. So if you go to their main meeting, that's what they talk about. There is a subgroup that focuses on fuzzing. It's hard to describe. It's a discussion primarily of the main fuzzing implementations and users. But if you want them to do something else, like focus on patching tools, in one sense, it's pretty connected to S-bombs, obviously, because once you get an S-bomb, you want to cross compare to the problems and then start fixing. But if you want something started up, it may you may have to form another group within the tooling or somewhere else, because they have expressly decided they've got to focus for now on S-bombs.
Yeah, this was a mention from Sarah Evans.
Okay.
And I'm assuming Sarah Evans is part of that security tooling working group. I don't have I don't have a dog in the fight, but I agree.
You do. You do have dogs in this fight. Sorry.
yeah. Okay, shrug. Security tooling working group is S-bomb everywhere at this point. So that's well stated, David. I feel like if there's room, excellent. Maybe after we've cured the cancer that is S-bomb.
Oh man.
after we've cured that cancer. In the positioning meeting, we're talking about, there was a blog mentioned about S-bomb, M-bomb, D-bomb, E-bomb, all these bombs versus salsa provenance. And please, for the love of God, I chime in on that every single time. I had to bite my tongue on this one. I don't even understand why these are topics of conversation. Anyway, once we get S-bomb solved and we get VEX started, perhaps we can begin to think about other tooling as well. So I agree. You got to focus on one, scope for one, focus on one first, finish that, and then get to the others. Just because of the importance of it at this point.
I had a quick question.
Go ahead, Randall.
Mm-hmm. Yep, Randall, go ahead. Randall, we heard you say, I've got a quick question, and then you fell off. Can you repeat?
Here. Can you hear me now? Hold on.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that. I was asking, do you know of any groups that actually still keep like their own set of patches for their binaries, or is that just like a distro thing?
Wait a minute, binaries. Hold it. You said patches and then binaries.
Like, so do you know of it, like at Gen 2, and most distros keep like a patch, like we have ways of patching software. But besides the distros, do you know of anyone like, because I know like there is kind of that old recommendation that you should review every patch before you like apply it and whatnot. But do you know of anyone that still follows that or not really?
Well, I'm confused. I'm confused because you said patch and binary as if that was the same thing.
Well,
all
what
patches
I mean is
I've ever seen are source, not binary.
Well, yeah, what I mean is that.
And he dropped off again. Randall, whatever tech you're using is not your friend today.
He's probably using the iPhone 8.
Is that better?
That is better. Yeah.
No. What it is that I actually like my water heater popped. That's why I was late. I was gonna be early, and I'm like underwater somewhat. So I'm pretty.
Okay, so tell me about patches, and then you said binary, and that confused me because I almost never have patches binary. They do exist, but that's our almost all patches are source code. Yes, there are binary patches too, but I wouldn't assume that patch means binary.
Is he underwater again? Are you swimming, Randall?
I don't know. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yes,
Yeah.
but it is touch and go.
I'm sorry. So what I was saying.
And he cut. Randall, you might want to type it in.
Yeah, let me type it in.
All right. The other question is, can he hear us? So how's this? I'm going to riff, and then we'll see what Randall said. But my experience is that there are both binary and source patches, but almost all patches are source. Sure, there are binary also, but nowadays they're typically generated from the source patches. So, you make a change, and in my vernacular, patch just means change. So
and I don't
every
know
time
any organization that's patching without testing the patch first. So I mean I think that's just standard operating. But I don't know if any organization is doing that. I mean, if you got to know if the patch is going to break something else, right?
Okay. Yeah. So Brandon asked, do you know of any groups that keep their own set of patches for their compiled binaries? Sure. I mean, lots of organizations do that, but I'd put a whole bunch of caveats on this. I actually know of some organizations, and this is bad behavior, and hopefully it's mostly gone, where they would directly patch the binaries, not change the source code. You would actually open up the binaries, and here's the change to it. If you were running on, an old mainframe, and all you had was the executable code, and you didn't have the source, and you had to fix it, that's what you do.
Right.
But I think modern software is so large now, and basically the source code, if you don't have it, you already know it's a disaster. Sooner or later, you're going to have to figure out the source code. So you grab a decompiler and create a source code and then generate things again. So I think the use case for someone who is patching binaries directly without editing source code is almost nil. That's a pretty rare condition today. If you're patching binaries because you've modified the source code and then you just want to update just a binary that's already out there, there are a lot of tools that do that. And yeah, a lot of organizations do that. It's an optimization for distribution. I know Microsoft does that, and I know a lot of organizations do that. It's a lot, if you already have the file, you don't need to resend the whole file, but it's a minor optimization that, it wouldn't be particularly visible anywhere else. Jay, feel free to just, say I'm all wrong.
Oh no, I would no, you're not wrong at all. I think for the purpose of what we're talking about here is just including a tool, including the tool or the further development of the tool that we can include from this framework in the security tooling working group. I mean, finish what we're doing in SBOM first, and then bring that over. But in terms of patches, I did, yes, but also, there was a mention of about testing those patches before, and if you're not testing the patch before you do anything, that's not good business.
No, that is terrible business. Yeah, so I agree with you. I guess here's what I've been assuming, and I'm going to put this, since this is the S2C2F SIG meeting, it seems like we should talk about S2C2F.
Yeah.
So let me connect it back. When from an S2C2F perspective, and Jay, you can tell me if this is wrong, maybe this is not adequately clear. Typically when a group sends out, when an organization sends out a binary patch, it's an optimization to say, I assume you already have version X.
Mm-hmm.
Here is the patch to change this to version X.1.
Right.
And it's just a way so that I don't have to send the whole thing because you already have the previous version.
Right.
Now, if you don't have the previous version, You then have to download X+1. But in either case, I'm assuming that whether you download the patch or you download the whole thing, it will end up as exactly the same file that has a hash and hopefully a signature. And that's what you're checking. And so let's say that somebody distributes a binary patch to a file and your tools screw up, either the sending or receiving. Well, obviously that's terrible. Yeah. But the good news is that on the receiving end, the first thing they do is reconstitute the new version, check the hash, check the signature. If it's wrong, nothing else happens. I mean, it's not good, obviously, if your tools have that kind of pretty substantive error. And most of these tools have been tested over decades. So it's pretty unusual today to have that kind of mistake. They're relatively small programs. But it's certainly not that software can't make a mistake. It's not that someone can't write a mistake.
I think it's easily detected. I think the only thing the only thing to be careful on is whether or not, and it depends on what we're talking about, whether it's the third-party binaries or just the open source components themselves. But if you're mirrored repositories internally, you're going to have to know or learn or get notifications that there have been patches or there have been updates to versions of the components that you're using to re-mirror those repositories, unless you have, unless there's a sync, some type of a sync happens where if there's changes or it syncs every week or something like that, right? Because what you don't want to do is mirror bad components, right? So so there's got to be some type of a notification of that. And I think the only issue is, which you see in most organizations today, is they're using components that are not the right versions because the repository itself has the wrong version still, or have not been patched properly. So.
Okay, so now that I've said what I said, I'm not sure that S2C2F makes clear what I said, or maybe it doesn't even require it.
Which you know what?
Basically, the difference between, the assumption I've been making generally is that when you receive a patch, step one is you reconstitute to a binary, that you reconstitute it back to a full new version, which is then installed and updated. Yeah. Because otherwise it's plausible that someone who downloads version X+1 and someone who gets a patch to create X+1 will get different things. That's what you don't want.
Definitely a different hash, right?
Well, the patch, the bits for the patch are going to be different than the bits for the full download. Yes. But the bits for the patch should eventually reconstitute back to exactly the same thing as a full download, right?
Mm-hmm. Should.
Well, right, exactly.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
does S2C2F enforce that?
You know what? I'll go out here and I'll say I don't think so, and I'll say I say it might make a mention, but I don't think it does, and I think that's something that we can actually write in here to make part of S2C2F. So I think that's important. That part isn't. This whole conversation is important to make sure it's in the spec.
So if you don't mind, I'm gonna create a new issue within S2C2F and talk about binary patches, ensuring that binary patches, when reconstituted, are the same as the original.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what is today, by the way? This is February 28th. Ooh, last day per discussion 2023. All right, so I'm gonna we need to
should there also be situations where it's unavoidable, like, because there's some notable violators of this, like Xorg.
Like who?
Like Xorg, like X server, like Xorg server.
Why does it?
Because they don't really bump their version numbers. There's like, I could tell you right now, there's like 300 or 400 commits over the last version. So it's unavoidable. You have to patch it manually. In order, if you want like it to work like normal, if you want it to work like it's really old, then yeah. But if you want it to work like normal, then you have to patch it manually.
But that's a different issue. And for one thing, those are source patches. Those aren't binary patches, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
They are.
Okay. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
patches.
Yeah. All right. So X is a different matter. And really, I think what you're seeing, and they're not unique, unfortunately, in this aspect.
No.
What you're seeing is some really, really old software following, in some cases, some really bad practices. I would argue, because I was around then, they were bad practices then. Okay. So the failure to learn has continued. And for my Xorg friends, I love you guys, but some of the things you do are insane. You know, I appreciate the results because I use them all the time, and I do. But yeah, so and really the fundamental problem here is, you know, sharing a patch. A patch in the old terminology is just a difference. It could be either source or binary, and really every time you create a get commit, the difference between that and the previous commit it's based on is the patch.
And did you know that if you add .patch to anything on GitHub, it'll create a patch version? It could be commit or PR.
No, but I'm not surprised. Yeah, so
I want everybody to know we are about 5 minutes over. So I'm welcome to sit here and continue the conversation, but I just wanted to make sure one's aware of we're over time.
Right. Okay. So how's this? For one thing, I'm going to add, I've already added the issue. It's issue 13. Okay. Excellent. Because I don't, you know, at first I was going, where the heck is Randall going with this nonsense? But I'll go, oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. You know, when you download a binary patch, you should make sure it's the same as original. Otherwise, we have the problem that somebody downloading a patch might not get the same thing as a straight download, which is clearly not desired. And I also think it's there's a trivial fix.
I have a quick question, not to derail. I have a quick question.
Oh, you already did that. Too late.
But what happens when you talk about something like Debian, where their HTTPD is actually actively different than the HTTPD? Would that be just a different binary?
Wait. The wait from the what?
So, like, you know how Debian Apache applies their patches to HTTPD?
You mean Debian attaches their patches to HTTPD? What? You mean the Apache web server?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So would that would essentially be because that in the community is considered a different piece of software.
It is.
Okay.
It is. Okay. If you download the software from the Apache Software Foundation, and by the way, the Apache Software Foundation has a policy, they only provide source code. They never produce compiled code, but that's just a specific policy of them, which, by the way, they sometimes sort of break. But yeah, the HTTP, and even if they called it Apache web server, that is not the same source. Okay. And so, yeah, if I download software from Debian, that's not the same as downloading it from Apache. Now, both Debian and Fedora and Red Hat in general, they practice, I've forgotten what they call it, but they very carefully isolate the changes they make from the original. And I salute that. But even if they didn't, it doesn't matter. I think that's a good practice, but it doesn't matter. From a user's perspective, they got it from Debian or they got it from Apache, and that's your source.
Fair.
And then a lot of these, how the heck does this work? They go away. If I got some software from Microsoft, I would, there's my source. It doesn't, whatever organization I got it from, they're the somebody else may have some other software with a name, but isn't that's
cutting out, David. Cutting out. You're in and out.
Really?
Yeah, Mike was in and out. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're out of time anyway. So anyway, so I've added the issue. Let's
I appreciate the explanation, David, by the way.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the extra time too.
Okay.
This is really good.
And I'm gonna and Jay, you have convinced me. I'm gonna follow up, and for the taxonomy thing, it maybe that's actually something I should else raise. Is maybe we should make this the S2C2F, and really I think it's a naming thing because you cover the issues mostly. Although it'd be interesting to do the crosswalk for that too.
Yeah.
You know, because being able to say, hey, not just these are names, but hey, look, here's a taxonomy and we've covered it. That's pretty compelling.
I mean, look, you know, something that we can do across the entirety of the OpenSSF. I mean, I'll show you. So Krob and I have been working on something, and I'll show it to you later too. I think it's something that could really help everyone out a great deal. So,
okay.
All right, guys.
All right. Hey, thank you
very
so
much.
very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jay.